Hi everyone. If you remember the Harvard Business School videos, you saw a lot of things I worked through on my executive education as we went through that experience, especially during Module 5. Now, one of the things I had trouble with during that was negotiation. Wasn't that I was horrible at it, it was just that during the scenarios, I was not capturing as much value or creating as much value or doing as well as perhaps some of the other classmates were doing. So I kind of was lagging on that and was definitely an opportunity for improvement. Since I've come back to the real world, if you will, and started working on different things, I went out and I bought the copy of Negotiation Genius, which has been a fantastic book to go through, and I felt it would be valuable to walk through that with you right now. The first thing that popped up in this book that I appreciated is how they went through scenarios, very similar to what we had in the executive education course. So they have examples of buying a house, buying some land for a condo deal, those types of things. So it really gives some like concrete things to bounce ideas off of. It makes it extremely relatable and easy to follow through. And then we have about 6 different like lessons that I took away from it and I wanted to keep remembering for myself. And part of the reason why I'm creating the video is so I can remember these myself. The first lesson is always, always, always listen to the other side and seek understanding for what they are looking after. There is a classic story of 2 college roommates who there's an orange on the counter and they fight over it and they decide to cut it in half because that's most fair and most equitable. When in fact one of the roommates was hungry and wanted to eat it and the other one wanted to use it to make cocktails. There was more value that could have been created if they simply will have understood each other's positions. In the same manner, there are several examples of this in the story where understanding where the other person is coming from helps bring about additional things, where you can create an additional value for both parties, right? And that brings us into 2. Really, there's a large discussion of 2 things. One is value creation, where you make better things for both parties. And then you also have value grab or claiming, if you will. So you have to be always considering both of these. Often when we go into a negotiation, especially these are the things I did all the time, is I was always trying to get a bigger slice of the pie. And it's cliche to say, you want to be creating even bigger pies. So you have that parable from the college kids. Very similar, you have to be looking for how do you create additional value. And they give several really good examples in the book of different value creation that people would be making. The book also claims value creation is so important because as you create more value, you can obviously seize more or claim more of that value as well. Usually they 2 go hand in hand to making people better and happier for both sides of the deal. The third big takeaway was looking at your BATNA or your best alternative solution. So if you were going into a deal and the deal just completely fell through, what is your best alternative? The classic one I think most people can relate to is looking for a job. So if you don't take this job, what is the other one you have to fall back onto? And this is also why when people discuss, hey, if you're looking for jobs, you should be looking while you already have one. It's because your BATNA is pretty strong. You can easily go back to that, as opposed to being put into a position where you don't have any backup alternatives. And so one of the things that I feel I do very well, which did not equate at all to these scenarios, is you can actively increase your BATNA at any time. So if you're going into a poor position or realizing you're in a poor position, figure out a way to increase the alternative if that doesn't work. It's also important to understand the other side's BATNA, or what happens when you decide to walk away. If you have your cards right, you might be able to understand that you walking away is a bigger detriment and you can claim more value just by understanding that they don't have a good alternative. The book also does a really good job of discussing possible ways to approach issues, whether it's the first offer or it's how to deal with irrational requests or things that seem unreasonable to you. It provided a lot of different coping mechanisms that I thought were valuable, and I can reflect upon if I see those in the different negotiations I have. The last little tip that I thought was interesting is always offer many different alternatives and just switch up some of the things that you feel are valuable. So in giving different options, it helps tease out what the other party might think is extremely valuable from the entire deal. And in that way, you can help gauge, okay, well, this is important to me, this is the walk away, and get better results all around. And all that from just understanding some additional things. So those are my takeaways from Negotiation Genius. It was fun to read as I was carrying around little Jacob and doing all the chores that a new father has to take care of. And definitely great to use during my found time during my parental leave. Now that I'm back to work, I'm going to see how many of these different tips and tricks from Negotiation Genius I can use. Have a great week. Bye.